interesting having done videos for 10 years because I remember reviewing WrestleMania 23 and now I'm reviewing WrestleMania 33. And the thing is, honestly, it hasn't changed much. Like, people are saying it's starting to be the same thing every year. Every year it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be the big stadium environment, the ring with the 4 big pillars on each corner, the big long ramp, and the big fancy stage where you have all these ham and eggers coming out to these big fancy overproduced entrances, and you don't care about those wrestlers for the rest of the year, but you care about them now because it's WrestleMania? Like, remember WrestleMania 27? Where the Miz main evented and he had that big entrance where he busted through his logo, you know? You don't care about him for the rest of the year. You just care about him now because it's WrestleMania and you're here for the spectacle. But it's starting to be the same thing every time. But I do admit that things have gotten better. I do admit that the WWE actually looks like it's trying to make WrestleMania feel like WrestleMania again. I used to talk about how ever since WrestleMania hit its 20s, the WWE seemed to have forgotten how to put on WrestleMania. I mean, you look at some of these WrestleMania cards, they look like glorified, over-bloated episodes of Raw. I mean, you look at some of the cards, they barely qualify for a SummerSlam. I mean, come on. WrestleMania 27, main evented by Cena versus The Miz. But it looks like they're finally trying to make it better. Finally trying to make it epic again. I mean, this WrestleMania, you had Goldberg versus Lesnar. You had Triple H versus Sting at WrestleMania 31. You had Lesnar versus Undertaker at WrestleMania 30. They're trying to make things feel larger than life again. But it's a double-edged sword. Because the WWE can't make new stars, in order to make these epic matches, they have to bring back all these part-time wrestlers from 20 years ago. Like Brock Lesnar, Goldberg, The Undertaker, Sting. So you either use these old stars part-time to make these epic matches, or you focus on the current roster full of ham and eggers, where it's a lot harder to make epic matches. So it's a double-edged sword. But still, I can appreciate the WWE trying to make things larger than life again. Now let's talk about WrestleMania 33. I actually got on an airplane and flew to WrestleMania weekend. But on the plane ride there, I had to sit next to this big, fat-ass behemoth of a woman. You know, like, remember a few years ago there was controversy because some airline was charging fat people multiple seats? I can understand exactly where they're coming from because this fat woman, her gut was like coming into my area, you know? Like, I got economy plus seats, but it didn't matter because she took away the plus. Like, I was taking my water bottle, like, trying to create distance, you know? Then the flight attendant comes by with drinks, and of course she's like, I'd like a Coke Zero. And I'm like, bitch? Really? Coke Zero? What are you going to tell me next? That you're tired because you just came from the gym? Then she starts scrolling pictures on her smartphone. And it's like alternating pictures between food and motivational quotations. Like, chocolate cake, apple pie, always remember that you're beautiful. Caramel sundae, French toast, I am woman, hear me roar. Mac and cheese, mashed potato. Then she starts complaining to her friend about how Tinder is not working for her. And I'm like, bitch, you gotta be out of your mind because you are too much. And I mean too much. So I go to Orlando and I go to WWE Access, which is their WrestleMania Fan Fest. And honestly, it was a disappointment. You know, there's nothing there. The best part was the food. I mean, you go into this big convention hall, and one corner of the room is just a big merchandise booth where they just want you to buy more stuff. Then you got all these interactive stations where you can do things like cut your own promo and walk down an entrance aisle doing a wrestler entrance. You know, but I'm like a grown man. Why the hell would I want to do an entrance for Dean Ambrose or Bayley? You know, but that's exactly what I saw. I saw all these grown men and middle-aged men coming down the aisle pretending to be Bayley. But more on that later. Then you had all these autograph stations, and I know it depends on what time you go. At certain times there are a lot of big-name stars, but on the particular time I went, there was nobody. It was all these no-name wrestlers I never even heard of. It was like all these people I never heard of, and then the Ascension. But why the hell would I want a selfie with the Ascension? Why the hell would I want to wait in line for an hour just to take a picture with them? You know, all that's going to happen is I'm going to spend the next 5 seconds deleting the picture. You know, you see what I mean when I say the best part was the food? Now let's talk about the actual WrestleMania 33 show. First of all, the entranceway. The entranceway doesn't even look like a WWE entranceway anymore. It looks like something WCW might do. Like, remember when WCW would always have these corny entrances in their pay-per-views? Like at Halloween Havoc, they would have the big inflatable pumpkin. In that Beach Blast, they would all have all the sand and beach balls near the entranceway, and people would be laying on the sand trying to get a tan, even though it's in an arena. Like, that kind of corny entrances, I associate that with WCW. But the WWE are the ones that are like that now. Like, this time, the WrestleMania is in Orlando, so it's the ultimate thrill ride. So the entranceway is designed like a roller coaster, like a theme park, and you got this elevated walkway, this ramp that's raised above the fans instead of being down with the fans. I associate that with WCW. All right, if WCW did a modern-day, big-budget stadium show, that's what the entranceway would look like. Anyway, the first match on the card was AJ Styles versus Shane McMahon, and there isn't much to say about this match except it was the typical Shane McMahon match. Everyone remembers the classic King of the Ring moment where Kurt Angle threw Shane McMahon through the window, or when Shane jumped off the cage and jumped off the Titantron. This was more the typical Shane McMahon match. He did his usual elbow drop through the announce booth and the Van Terminator, and that's pretty much it. There isn't much to talk about. I will note that I did notice how quiet the crowd was. Although at this point I thought it was just because it was an open stadium and you just couldn't hear the noise. The next match was Kevin Owens versus Chris Jericho in yet another "You're not my friend anymore" storyline. I mean, how many of these "You're not my friend anymore" storylines are we going to have in this PG era? I mean, even in the WWE family era of the 80s and 90s, the storylines were more than just "You're not my friend anymore," As far as the match itself goes, there's not much to say. I mean, Kevin Owens beat Jericho, but who cares? Fandango beat Jericho at WrestleMania 29. So if Fandango beats Jericho at WrestleMania, then who cares if Kevin Owens beats Jericho? The next match was the Raw Women's match. Now, now let's get back to Bayley, right? What the hell is the appeal of Bayley, right? Why do people like her? I mean, you have to understand, I'm an Attitude Era fan. I grew up on women like Chyna and Medusa, all right? So from that perspective, I'm looking at this kitty-looking female wrestler with a sideways ponytail frolicking down to the ring. Like she just busted out of some Disney cartoon, and I see all these grown fat men in the crowd in their Bayley shirts like going crazy. Like, what's going on? What am I missing? I mean, look at her face. It looks like a peanut, all right? Like, she looks like the planter peanut guy's daughter, Like, I'm not cheering for a peanut. Charlotte should have won this title and brought some class back to the women's belt. The next match on the card was a tag team title match, which was the best part of the show for obvious reasons. This just goes to show that anything from the Attitude Era is awesome. Anytime anything from the Attitude Era comes back, whether it's The Rock, Stone Cold, Kurt Angle, or the Hardy Boys, it's like they never left. The crowd just picks off where they left off. Anytime something from the Attitude Era comes back, it immediately outshines the current roster. In this tag team match, before the Hardy Boys came out, Enzo and Big Cass were getting all the attention, right? But the moment the Hardys come out, it's like Enzo and Big Cass weren't even there. They were completely outshined. And the way the crowd went crazy when the Hardy Boys came out just goes to show that the crowd had no excuse for being so quiet during the Shane McMahon-AJ Styles match. The next match was the Cena match, and can you believe that Cena still can't win over a WrestleMania crowd? They've been booing him since 2006. It's been 11 years. And as for the post-match segment, in my opinion, it was obviously pre-planned and does not compare to the Macho Man Elizabeth segment. I mean, when Macho Man was on his knees and he was sweating and he had that terrified look on his face, man, he sold the heck out of that segment. And just goes to show what a great performer the Macho Man was. The next match was Triple H versus Seth Rollins, and this was during my food run, so I missed most of the match. However, I did catch an apparent contradiction by the commentators. During the Shane McMahon-AJ Styles match, the commentators talked about how if Shane McMahon landed that corkscrew splash, that the match would be over. However, in this match, Seth Rollins does land the corkscrew splash, and Triple H kicks out. So, I guess the commentators are wrong. It's not the end of the match when that move is landed. The next two matches were the world title matches. So basically, the world titles are back to being mid-card titles, just like when CM Punk had it. As for the matches themselves, Randy Orton versus Bray Wyatt was a boring match with a quiet crowd, as if we're supposed to be scared of earthworms. And Goldberg versus Brock Lesnar consisted almost entirely of 10 suplexes and a bunch of spears. Can you believe that? 10 suplexes and a bunch of spears. Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior looks like a 5-star technical wrestling match compared to 10 suplexes and a bunch of spears. Now at this point, I thought the show was over. I mean, Brock Lesnar beat Goldberg at almost exactly 11 o'clock, so I thought the show was over. But for some reason, it kept going. And the next match was the Smackdown Women's match, and I was so happy to see Mickie James back at WrestleMania. You had Becky Lynch with her braided hair. She looked like the Orange Predator. Maybe she should fight Bayley. Peanut versus Predator. And while it was great to see Naomi win the women's belt, they really should have kept on Alexa Bliss. I mean, they should have given Alexa Bliss a long-ass, New Day, honky-tonk man style title reign. I mean, we have so many belts in the company right now. They should have kept it on Alexa Bliss with a long-ass title reign to build some prestige into it. The next match was the main event, which was Roman Reigns versus The Undertaker. Now, my first thought during this match was, why would The Undertaker character dye his hair and dye his beard, right? The Undertaker character is a zombie character. Why would he care about looking pretty? You know that new Wolverine movie that just came out, Logan, which had Wolverine as like an old man with like gray hair and a gray beard? That's how they should have done The Undertaker. Gray hair, gray beard, embracing his position as a grizzled old veteran, right? Especially considering this was supposedly The Undertaker's last match. You could have had that same parallel with Logan. Old man Taker. That's how they should have done it, instead of him still trying to look young. So overall, WrestleMania 33 was okay, right? Like most WrestleMania, somewhere in the middle. But I do appreciate the WWE seemingly listening to the fans and trying to make things better and epic again. Other than that one concert, there were almost no stupid backstage skits like in previous WrestleManias, like Khali doing that American Idol singing thing. There was almost none of that crap, and there was almost no extended celebrity segments that have nothing to do with anything. Virtually the whole show was focused on the wrestlers doing their entrances and doing their matches, and I appreciate that.